Imagine this. The year is 2025, and tensions between China and the Philippines have reached their peak. The world watches nervously, expecting fleets of warships, fighter jets, and missiles. But then, something completely unexpected happens. Instead of launching weapons, China decides to launch pee. Yes, you heard that right. What if all of China's 1.4 billion people decided to pee at the exact same time during a war with the Philippines? Could it create a flood so massive it might reach our shores? Could it cause a tsunami that drowns Manila Bay? Or would it just be the strangest synchronized bathroom break in human history? It sounds absurd, almost like a comedy sketch. But let us use this bizarre idea as a way to explore something deeper. The power of China, the vulnerability of the Philippines, and the strange intersection of science and geopolitics. Before we get into the pee tsunami, let's first understand the reality of China's power. China today is a superpower. With over 1.4 billion people, it has the largest population in the world. It also has the second largest economy, producing everything from smartphones to electric cars to weapons. Militarily, China boasts more than 2 million active soldiers, advanced fighter jets, aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and one of the most modernized armies on Earth. But China's influence isn't just in weapons, it's in politics, culture, and geography. It has built artificial islands in the South China Sea, claimed vast areas of disputed waters, and pushed its weight against neighbors like Japan, Vietnam, Taiwan, and of course, the Philippines. China's strategy is sometimes described as salami slicing, taking small, incremental steps that gradually expand its control without sparking full-scale war. This is why Filipino fishermen in the West Philippine Sea often find themselves blocked by Chinese Coast Guard ships. It's not an all-out war, but it is a constant struggle, so the Philippines finds itself in a difficult position. Compared to China, we're smaller in both size and military might. With about 118 million people, we're not even 1/10 China's population. Our military budget is far smaller, our ships and planes are fewer, and our geography, an archipelago scattered across the ocean, makes us vulnerable. And yet, the Philippines has strengths too. We are resilient. We have allies, like the United States, through the Mutual Defense Treaty. We sit in a strategic location that makes us valuable in regional politics. And perhaps most importantly, we have a history of surviving against bigger powers, from Spanish colonizers to Japanese invaders to natural disasters. But now, let's go back to the question that started this story. What if China tried to weaponize its biggest resource? Not its missiles, not its warships, but its people? What if, instead of bombs, it unleashed bladders? Here's where the comedy meets science. On average, a person pees about 300 to 400 milliliters at one time. That's about the size of a soda can. If all 1.4 billion Chinese citizens peed simultaneously, the total would be around 490 billion milliliters, or 490 million liters. That's nearly 500 million liters of liquid, roughly the same as 200 Olympic-sized swimming pools dumped out in one go. Sounds like a lot, right? But in the grand scheme of nature, it's tiny. To create a tsunami, you need the sudden movement of billions of tons of water, usually caused by earthquakes, underwater landslides, or volcanic eruptions. Even if all of China's pee were dumped into the ocean at once, it wouldn't even come close to moving enough water to generate a wave across the South China Sea. In fact, scientists explain that tsunamis are about displacement. You need something massive to shove entire sections of the ocean upward or downward. Human pee, no matter how synchronized, simply doesn't have the energy. At best, it might temporarily raise the water level in rivers or overwhelm sewage systems in Chinese cities. But a tsunami reaching Manila Bay? Impossible. Still, let's push the imagination further. Suppose China somehow managed to collect all that liquid and dump it into one spot. What would happen? First, it would flood local areas in China before it ever reached us. Imagine rivers overflowing in Guangzhou or streets flooding in Shanghai. Manila would stay dry, except maybe from laughing at the news headlines. Second, even if some of it reached the ocean, the vastness of the sea would dilute it almost instantly. The Pacific Ocean contains more than 700 million cubic kilometers of water. Compared to that, 490 million liters of pee is a drop in the bucket, literally. It wouldn't even raise sea level measurements by a fraction of a millimeter. So, scientifically speaking, the pee tsunami is impossible. Manila would not flood. The Philippines would not sink. At most, China would just be very, very smelly for a while. But let's not end there, because even though the idea is funny, it reminds us of something important: the sheer scale of China's population. When 1.4 billion people act together, whether it's consuming goods, producing products, or even peeing, they create an impact. And in the real world, that impact is seen in trade, economics, and politics. The Philippines, for example, imports huge amounts of products from China: electronics, clothing, household items, construction materials. Walk into any Filipino home and you'll find something made in China. That's the real wave of China. Not pee, but products. And in tourism, before the pandemic, millions of Chinese tourists visited the Philippines every year. They filled our hotels, ate in our restaurants, and bought our souvenirs. Their presence boosted local economies from Boracay to Palawan. That's another kind of wave, an economic one. So maybe the pee tsunami isn't about water at all. Maybe it's a metaphor for how massive China's influence can feel to smaller countries. It can be overwhelming. It can flood markets, dominate headlines, and reshape geopolitics. And the Philippines, right next door, is always on the front lines. But here's the twist. While governments argue, people live ordinary lives. The average Chinese citizen isn't thinking about drowning the Philippines in pee or invading Palawan. Just like Filipinos, they're thinking about family, jobs, and dreams. They're watching movies, celebrating holidays, and scrolling through their phones. So maybe the funniest part of this whole thought experiment is that it reminds us of our shared humanity. Everyone pees. It's the great equalizer. And if we can laugh together about something so basic, maybe we can also find common ground in bigger things, like peace, trade, and culture. So, what if all of China Iyesi people peed at the same time during a war with the Philippines? The scientific answer? No tsunami, no Manila flood, just an epic plumbing disaster in China itself. The political answer? It's a reminder of China's size and power, but also of the absurdity of conflict. And the human answer? We're not so different after all. Because in the end, whether you're in Beijing or Manila, everyone just wants a safe home, good food, and maybe a bathroom break now and then. And maybe, just maybe, if world leaders remembered that, there'd be fewer wars to worry about and fewer reasons to imagine things as strange as a tsunami made of pee.
A parliament building, the most powerful symbol of government in Nepal, was burning. Smoke poured into the sky while crowds of young protesters filled the streets of Kathmandu. They weren't afraid. They weren't backing down. And what shocked me most was that the police, the very people trained to protect those buildings, stepped back and did nothing. For a moment, it felt like the whole system had collapsed, and power was no longer in the hands of the politicians, but in the hands of the people. At first, I thought maybe this was fake news, but the